On this episode of Queued Up, we're joined by someone who proves that purpose doesn't always follow a straight line. It often circles back home. Terrence Flowers spent years in the business world, 2 master's degrees, a career built on strategy and success, but something was missing. So he made the bold move to trade the boardroom for the classroom. Now teaching middle school in the very community that helped raise him, Terrence is giving back in the most meaningful way, through his students. We talk about the teachers who shaped him, the power of second acts, and what it really means to measure success by impact, not income. This is Terrence Flowers, and this is Queued Up. This is Queued Up, where we amplify the voices of educators with the science, soul, and story shaping education. I need to understand more about your degrees.
Sure.
Business degrees?
Yeah. So I have a Bachelor's of Business Management from Friends University. I have a Master's of Business Law, also from Friends University. I am 1 credit shy from an MBA with an emphasis in marketing from Friends University. And I also have a Master's in Art of Teaching from Pittsburgh State University.
Okay, so which of these things belong together is immediately what I was thinking. So you got all of these areas. You were in corporate America, in business, and then we have a master's in education. So
yeah.
how did that happen?
So my journey in the corporate world, I started out, of course, like any kid going to college. I took a little break, started a family, but I knew that my success was going to come from having an education. So I went back, got my bachelor's in management, worked for a little while in the mortgage industry, kind of got burnt out on the mortgage industry. And then I went back, started on my MBA. And for a while, I wanted to go to law school. So that's where the
Business and law, yeah.
Yeah. And so I took that as a precursor to going to law school and decided I didn't want to go to law school. But I went ahead and finished my master's in business law. So I have a degree in law, but I'm not a lawyer. And I'm sure we'll get into this. I just really got so burnt out in corporate America. I couldn't take it anymore. And so I had an opportunity to pursue a master's in teaching. And so that's where that came in from Pittsburgh State University.
So you're in corporate America.
Yes, ma'am.
You're getting burned out.
Very.
What drew you to education?
You know, as a youngster, or as a young man, I always had considered education. But of course, you hear all the horror stories about, there's no money in education and things like that. So I even talked to one of my high school teachers about education when I was in high school. And he seemed to do well for himself, but I just was scared that I wasn't going to be able to, sustain myself in education. And so I went, the corporate route, worked for several companies in, positions of responsibility. I worked for JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase sold to a company called Empower Financial. So I worked in Empower Financial on what's called their callback team. And I did that for a long time. And I tell you, the work was so mundane that I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And so one day I literally had a panic attack. And I don't mind saying that either.
Yeah.
I literally had a panic attack, and I just felt like I couldn't breathe. I just knew I had to make a change. And I knew if I didn't change, then I would just stay forever. And so after I pulled myself back together, I went back to my computer and I started Googling education, alternative certification programs, because I had a family. So I knew I couldn't just hard stop,
Right.
And quit. So I Googled alternative certification programs. 2 of them came up. One was University of Southern California. And I actually called them because I thought it'd be kind of cool to, to go to USC. And it was just cost prohibitive. It was like $54,000 a semester and just way too much money. And then I reached out to the Kansas City, Kansas, which was the second one that popped up, alternative certification program, the Kansas City, Kansas Teaching Fellows Program. And I got a lady on the phone. Her name was Dr. Tracy Lynn. She's no longer there. But I just told her, I told her everything. And she said, we really want to get you to come in for an information session. I went in for an information session. And the day I went in for that information session, I knew, I was like, I want to do this.
This is where I want to.
This is what I want to do. And so, of course, I applied, and the rest is history. And I got hired. And this is how bad I wanted to do it. I got hired in October. The job didn't start until May. but I was locked in. And so I left my position and I took just a job, just to sustain myself and my family until it started. I started in May of 2019. One, started with the school district, and two, started on that master's degree in teaching. It's been a huge blessing ever since. Yeah.
Well, and if I'm thinking right, that's your alma mater, right? The school district you went back to is
Absolutely, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and which is a funny story. So I am a product of the Kansas City, Kansas school district, and when I applied to go back, it was so surreal. I remember my interview was in Arrowhead Middle School, and I remember going into the teachers' lounge, and I remember just being mesmerized by the teachers' lounge because as a kid, you always want to know what's in that teachers'
What do
lounge.
they do behind
Right,
that
what do they
door?
do? They actually showed me to the restroom in the teachers' lounge, and I remember just standing there for a few minutes, just sort of looking around, just being in awe.
It's like
And it
being behind the curtain,
yeah,
right?
just like seeing the behind the
Oh,
curtain, it was amazing. And so my initial goal was to go back and teach at the school that I graduated from, which is Washington High School. And, I actually had gone to the school district to drop off some paperwork, and when I went to the school district to drop off the paperwork, my former, social studies teacher, Dr. Donnie Mitchell, just happened to be walking out, and he was, headed to get something to drink. And he said, "I heard you got hired by the district." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I want you to work for me." And I was like, "Cool." And he said, "But he said, I want you to teach middle school." It's like, "Okay, I wanted to teach high school, but that's fine." He's like, "And I want you to teach computers." And I was like, "What?" So
wait
it's
a second.
yeah,
What about what I want to teach?
exactly. So it was like one of those scenarios, like they say, you playing and God laughs, and
Yeah.
it's been a crazy ride ever since.
So is computers what you started out teaching?
Yeah, I started out teaching computers. So I talked to my former social studies teacher. He asked me, said he wanted me to come to school, and I was honored. And literally, like 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm on a plane to North Carolina to go learn coding. And I've always really sort of shied away from technology.
Yeah.
And here I am learning to code.
Just so you can teach this class
Just so
that
I
he
could
went
teach this class.
wow.
Yeah, just so I could teach.
So your teacher knew you well then.
He knew me very well.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's funny because he was my teacher. He was a younger teacher when I had him, but I still back then he was Mr. Mitchell. And I remember when I got hired and he was like, "You can call me Donnie." And I could not call him Donnie. I just for out of respect. I still to
Yes.
this day can't call him Donnie. I still call him Dr. Mitchell.
I have the same thing. I went back and taught with my former teachers, and everyone called them by their first name, and I could not. It doesn't feel right.
It didn't even to this day. It does not feel right when I see him. I still call him Dr. Mitchell.
That's awesome.
I don't think he likes that, but it's respect. It's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've spent over 20 years in corporate America before you came into education. You talked about the panic attack that you had. What was it like feeling stuck in that
Yeah.
career and thinking, I got to move on? And not just what was it like, but just kind of walk me through, like, that's a big jump.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was going back to that really it's kind of emotional because I really did feel stuck. I just felt like I had no traction on where I wanted to go and really no direction. I will say this, and I've told other kids since, if you want to go into the business world, that's fine, but you need to specialize.
Yeah.
A general business degree gets you an entry-level job and in the door, and now it's time to play office politics to get where you wanna
Yes.
go. There was no direction,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it anymore.
Well, and I think that there's probably a lot of people feeling stuck in careers right now and not knowing what to do, and you gotta find that passion.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we have educators that feel stuck.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we have corporate America that feels stuck.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them when you're looking back at your own leap into education? If you've got somebody in corporate America that feels stuck and feeling like they wanna do something, what would you say to them?
I would tell them, "Stop searching for money." Too many times we go into a career or go into a job and money is our motivating factor. It only lasts for so long.
Yeah.
It only lasts for so long. And it sounds so cliche, but do something you're passionate about because I believe, and I've found that this to be the case, when you do something you're passionate about, the provision comes, the money comes, and it comes in different areas.
Yeah.
but you'll make it work because it's work you're passionate about. Somebody sent me a meme one time that said, teachers don't do it for the income, they do it for the outcome, which I thought was funny because we have bills we have to pay as well. But I have found that opportunities have come my way, and I feel like I'm doing better than I've ever had when I was in the corporate scene. And there's nothing wrong with it. It just was not a
Was for
good
you.
fit for me.
Yeah.
My brother does great,
Yeah.
and he loves it. It just was not a good fit for me.
Well, and you've touched on that where you came back to alma mater, you're giving back to the community. And then, you talked about the provision and you're also the adjunct professor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like different opportunities. It's still in the teaching realm, but as an adjunct professor, are you doing business?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
And that's another thing. Right now I'm teaching organizational leadership and management. And I've taught strategic management. I'll be teaching it again starting October 13th. I get to use that business background and the
Yes.
things that I did. And I always say, and I tell my college students, as like, maybe it's a hiatus from the corporate world, but right now I'm enjoying what I do.
Oh, for sure.
I love what I do. It really does sound cliche, and I'm serious. Like, there are times that I walk through the halls of the school that I work for, and I just really feel, one, proud of what I do, and two, just blessed to do what I do because not many people get to work at a job that they truly love. And I work with people that I truly enjoy being around. That right there is worth its weight in gold, in my opinion.
And you know what? I could see that in you because I got the opportunity to come into the district that you work in, and I was in your building.
Yeah.
And I would see you interacting with the kids,
Yeah.
interacting with the staff, and you could see the passion in you.
Yeah.
And when I started thinking about who should we have to come and talk about education and the great things that are happening, you were one of the first people that came to mind
Appreciate that. Thank you.
because I could see the passion in
Yeah.
you. And I'm like, this has to be told. There's some great things happening in education, and we sit on it sometimes because, it gets more traction when it's bad.
When it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've all seen the videos on, TikTok and Twitter where, teachers are getting assaulted and attacked. And that hasn't been my experience.
Yeah.
I've had some young people who did not want to be, told what to do, but that's been the least of my experience.
Yeah.
It's been mostly positive.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that the first year was really tough. It was really tough. And I've said this before. I think, COVID in that situation was a blessing and a curse because it ended abruptly. And I was able to sort of take a breather.
Get your breath. Like, let me recalculate this. Because that was your first year of teaching,
That was my
right?
first year.
What a tough year, first year teaching. And you know what's funny? That was actually my last year in the classroom.
I had a classroom that was set up for 30, 35 students. And there were times I'd have 50 kids in the classroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we were in an older building, and my classroom was half the size it is now, but I had twice as many kids there. We had a tough group of kids that year, and I was able to, weather that with the help of the staff.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about it. We sort of like band together and and it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I love when I go into schools and I get to see adults pouring into kids. Like, it really touches my heart. And,
Absolutely.
what I like to focus in on is that soul and that story of why people do what they do.
Yeah.
And I love nothing more than walking down a hall and seeing adults engaging positively with kids.
Yeah.
And I've just seen that again and again. Every time I've seen you in the building, that has been the story.
I love it. That's my favorite part is the interaction with the young people. I started collecting tennis shoes when I got into education, and it just helps build those relationships with those kids.
For sure.
Because they want to come by and they want to see what tennis shoes I'm wearing, or they want to, not even if they want to see what I'm wearing, but they want to ask me, what's your favorite shoe, Mr. Flowers? And I tell them about it, and we have those conversations. It really just helps build those relationships with those kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
And you're talking about connecting with students. And one of the things that you've said is very important to you is that representation.
Oh, absolutely.
And when we look at educators across the nation, only about 1.3% are Black men.
Yeah.
So how has being that representation in the classroom shaped your students' experiences and your own?
Absolutely. Young Black men, I really feel like they need to see it so they can be it. It sounds so silly, but they need to see it so they can be it. And I'm not saying I'm saving the world. That's not what I'm trying to imply at all. But I do love the fact that I can be a positive image in a young man's life.
Absolutely.
And you can be cool, if you will, and you can still have, well, the kids swag or whatever, if you will, but still be educated. That's the cool part, not
Yeah.
some of the other things that kids see. But
And it's not enough that you're just showing up. It's that you're showing up, you're passionate,
absolutely,
and they're seeing all of that.
absolutely,
Even the things you don't say, they still notice.
absolutely.
Because I'll tell you one thing, kids notice everything
Everything.
and they will point out all your flaws and all your goodness.
They will, they will, and it's helped me too when I'm moving around town. Going places. It's helped me as well because I try to be conscious of the way I present myself at all times. Because, man, I've gone to McDonald's to get a cup of coffee, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm seeing former students, and they're like,
Yeah.
I was at Quick Trip the other night, and the kid was like, "You look familiar," and I was like, "Wow, you remember me?" So it really has helped me be more conscious about the way I present myself, the way I interact with people throughout the city, because, like you said, they notice everything.
Everything.
And so I got to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward when I'm out just moving around the community, because whether you like it or not,
They're watching.
you're a role model.
Yeah,
You are
they're watching. And they want to know that you are who you say you
who
are.
you are. You got to be the same person in class that you're out. And so, I try to place high demands on kids. It's not enough just to show up to class. I definitely want you to put your best foot forward. And so I have to ensure that I'm doing the same thing so that when they see me, they're not seeing me doing anything that's not representation of my best self.
Okay, so I'm a little bit of a softie.
Okay.
And when you talk about having high expectations, I want to have high expectations for all kids all the time.
Yeah.
When I start seeing what some of these kids are going through,
Yeah.
I have a hard time not feeling like, oh, how do you keep your sense about you so that you are still requiring much of them?
Yeah. You know, when I first got into education, they had us read an article called A Warm Demander. And it's just that you have to set high expectations for young
Mm.
people. And they'll rise to those
Yes, they will.
expectations. And even kids in tough environments, they'll rise to those expectations. You know, a lot of kids, they realize they're maybe in a tough spot. And sometimes you can't hide that fact. You just say, "Hey, listen, it doesn't matter where you're at now." Especially I have middle school kids. 5 years sounds like a long time, but it's not. You'll snap your fingers and it'll be over.
It'll be
And
over.
when you graduate high school, it's your shot. You can do whatever you want to do. And you see kids all the time who have come from tough situations and made a lot of themselves. And I tell kids that too. You can do whatever you want to do, including be a jerk. But
It's one of the options.
It's one of the options. But it's your choice. It really is your choice. And life's not been all roses for a lot of us.
Right.
But it's up to you to change any situation that you're in.
How much of your own personal story do you share with the kids?
A lot. Like, because I always say I was not the best student until probably high school.
Yeah.
Some of it was not applying myself. Some of it was just lazy. But I always tell kids I wasn't the best student. But when I decided to be a better student, it was all up to me. And, I've had a lot of people approach me with a lot of things, multi-level marketing things and scam, whatever you want to call it. But I always knew that I was a decent basketball player, but not a great one. I knew that was not going to be my lot.
Yeah.
And so I knew that getting a strong education was going to be the only way that I was going to be able to make a success of myself. And so when I really started to get behind that, I really did. And it served me very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your students, you've been teaching for about 7 years, and your oldest students are 8th graders. So do you have former students now that are in college?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the 7 years, I have kids who are in college. I've had students who are just, working and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I see them all around town. And, it's always so cool to see a kid, especially when you were like,
You kind of wondered about,
yeah, you're like, this kid right here, I don't know.
like, not sure where they're headed.
Not sure what this young man's gonna or this young lady's gonna do. And just to see him, doing great things, starting businesses and,
Yeah.
and they're just working. Because
Doesn't it make you feel proud when you're like,
really
oh,
does.
he worked so hard on that sixth
Yeah.
grade social studies project?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just, I love it. But I do try to be very, honest with kids. I say I grew up in the same neighborhood you grew up in.
Yeah.
I did some of the same silly things that you probably have done or are going to do. And I just realized that none of that got me anywhere.
Yeah.
None of that got me anywhere. And, buckling down in school, life just seemed to get better when I did that.
Absolutely. You know, when you see those students, maybe let's say 10 more years down the road, what do you want them to say about you? Mr. Flowers, this is what I remember about Mr. Flowers.
I want them to say that, Mr. Flowers placed high demands on him and he was firm but fair,
Mm,
tough.
I like that, firm but fair.
Yeah. Sometimes I realize like they're just kids and sometimes I'm a little too tough, but I just know that the world is tough.
Right.
And, and I always tell kids, the only cop car I want to see you in is if you're driving it.
Yes.
And then sometimes I just tell them, hey, there are a lot of people who don't think you're going to succeed. You're going to prove them right?
Right.
You can. Or,
It's an option.
yeah, absolutely an option. You can prove them right, or you can complain about it, or you can use the God-given tools that you have, whatever that may be, whether you're a good basketball player, football player, wrestler. I coach wrestling, basketball, and track. If you can use, those talents, if you're a good writer, whatever you are, we all have different things that we're good at, and we can use those things to get us to where we want to go.
And it goes back to what you were saying about finding your passion.
Absolutely.
You were seeking education and going those different routes through the degrees.
Yeah.
But really, till you honed in on your passion. And how do you get kids to find their passion?
It's funny you say that because that's one of the things I do in the class I teach. I teach a careers class and I teach a science-based class called medical detectives. And I always tell kids that you have to definitely hone in on what you're sort of passionate about. And if you're not, you're just sort of shotgun approaching it.
Yeah.
So I have these conversations with these young people and I tell this story. One of my favorite musicians is a musician. His name is Boney James. And I've seen him perform probably 10 times. And every time he tells us one story, he tells a story about how when he was 14 years old, he walked into his music teacher's class and he was listening to Grover Washington Jr. and he was listening to a song called Mr. Magic. And Boney James said he walked into the classroom, heard that song, and it changed his life. He's like, I want to do that. I want to play that kind of music. And it changed his life. And now he performed that very song with that artist over 100 times.
Oh, wow.
So I always tell kids, what I would love to do for just one of you is to help you find the thing that you're passionate about. It won't happen for every kid, but if I introduce you to one thing that changes your life, my career was made.
You've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you found any kids yet that you feel like you've at least guided them on the path?
I don't know. To be
Too
honest, I don't know. Too early to
quick to
tell.
tell, yeah.
Too early to tell.
Yeah.
But I hope so. I know I've had some kids who had never wrestled before, and one is now wrestling in college. And I don't know if that's because of me. I like to think I had a little something to do with it. But I won't take any credit. But I know she's wrestling in college now.
Yeah.
So listen, my wrestling experience is limited at best. My son was the wrestler, and everything I know about wrestling, I will gladly admit I learned through him.
Yeah.
But just to introduce kids to the sport, and then when they get to high school and they can take it further. And so I've had at least one take that further.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I was into sports, so that was a big deal for me. And for me, it's not about how much the coach knows the sport.
Yeah.
It's about how much the coach knows the athlete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my most impactful teachers, they were my coaches as well,
Yeah.
were my coaches.
Yeah.
They knew how to push me. They knew how to pour into me. They knew how to challenge me at the right time. They knew how to encourage me at the right time. They knew how to chew me out at the right time.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think about that, and you don't have to know all the things about wrestling.
Yeah. We used to laugh at my high school basketball coach's, his name is Mr. Leonard Sparkman. And we would laugh about some of the things he said. And I find myself saying the same things to my athletes. Just some of the, the funny things that he said. I find myself saying those same things. And Coach Sparkman used to tell me, when I stop yelling at you, that's when you worry. As long as you still have my attention, you'd have nothing to worry about. And I tell kids those same things. And I found that to be the case in my business life and my work in education, that when people care about you, they care enough to critique what you do and tell you you're
Right.
wrong. And you got to be able to accept that feedback. Because I've had to have tough conversations about things that I not done well. Nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to take that feedback and use it and make changes. Right now, I asked the instructional coaches at my school to come in and do a coaching cycle on me so they could tell me what I'm doing right and, more importantly, what I'm doing wrong so that I can
Get
make
better.
those changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said Leonard Sparkman, and I was like, wait, I know that name. And that's because you named that
Absolutely.
person as somebody who guided you as a young man.
Oh, yeah. Coach Sparkman, James Lindsay, Melvin Smith, like I said, Dr. Donnie Mitchell. These are all Black male educators who, if I was in the hallway doing something silly, Coach Sparkman, he'd say choice words to me. Mr. Lindsay was my music teacher. He was the one I spoke to about education. And like I said, he always real sharp dressed. And I remember saying, I said, do you think I'll be able to make good enough money? And he looked at me, he was like, look at me.
See how I'm
Yeah.
dressed. That's what matters.
And so all these guys who really saw what I could be, even when I was a kid. And
Yeah. You didn't necessarily see it.
no, didn't necessarily see it all. And at times, seeing kids who were doing the wrong thing and sort of trying to gravitate towards that. And Mr. Ellison, who's passed on, would say, hey, you get away from them.
Yeah.
You get away from those boys. This is who you need to be over here with. This is where you're going. Those boys, I don't know what's going to happen to them. And some of them, obviously, they're kids, so some of them are doing fine now. Some of them aren't. But, the ones that were acting up in those times, he would say, hey, get away from them.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't talk to them, but I can talk to you.
Have you ever considered that what you're trying to accomplish in your students and what you want that final outcome to be, that you are that outcome for your previous educators?
Man, I hope they see me and realize that they, played a part in that, definitely. I know I reached out to Mrs. Sparkman when I decided to go into education, and she said, I'm going to let Coach know. And I hope he's proud of the fact that I did.
Oh,
yeah.
I am sure. When I see my students, because I've been teaching long enough, I think my career started in 97. Oh, so I've been teaching long enough that some of my students are old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when I see them, I'm like, hey, that was my former student.
Yeah.
Oh, this person did this. That. Because you spend so much time with kids. You want the outcomes. You just get them for that little glimpse, that little window, but you hope the world for them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love seeing kids do well.
Yeah.
Even like my son's friends. It's a trip now, seeing some of my son's friends, they got families of their own now, and seeing them do well, it really is, it does make you proud just to
It
know,
does.
I actually had one of my son's friends reach out to me. He said, I need some advice on raising boys. I was like, I have no clue what to tell you. Just it's a wild ride. Just
hang on tight. Yeah, we both are raised. I raised 3 and you're raising 3. Yeah.
And then I have a little girl as well. So yeah, I hope that my, former teachers see, like I said, because they definitely were, they played a big part in, although my father was there, but they did play a big part, because like I said before, my parents couldn't be everywhere.
Right.
They did, there were times that I was somewhere in my car where I said, I was going to be place A and I was really and
Surely not.
and I remember one time Mr. Ellison said, he's like, what are you doing way down there? I'm gonna tell your mom you're down there. No, Mr. Ellison, don't do it.
Hey, I'll get right back where I need to be.
So, they saw me, when I was doing things and and were able to tell me to, go get on out of there and do the right thing. So yeah, it takes a village.
It does.
And those guys were definitely people who, helped guide me.
Well, and we spend more time at school. Like when we were students, or now that we have students, we spend more time with those people than we sometimes do with our family, because you can get a few hours in the evening.
Exactly.
But you're spending hours and hours together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one thing that you realize is sometimes you may be the only positive
Ugh.
interaction that they may have with an adult that day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love it when teachers recognize that.
Yeah.
Like, you may be their only happy place today
Yeah, absolutely.
and make it a good one.
Absolutely. And that's what I try. Like I said, you can't come in here playing, but I do try to allow, if a young man or a young lady is tired that day, say, hey, I'll give you a few minutes. You need to, or talk to me.
What's going on?
Yeah, if you really need to lay down for a little bit,
Yeah.
we'll figure that out. But it needs to be a legit reason.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love seeing, it sounds weird, but I love to see kids eat. It's just like little baby birds. They're just, they're happy and they're playing, talking to their friends. So sometimes I'll go and sit in the cafe with the kids and eat lunch. I did it today. Eat lunch with kids. I love to see that when they get a few minutes just for downtime.
Yeah.
And because we don't have to be on them all the time. And I've had other teachers remind me of that. Sometimes I'll come in the door and I go right into teacher mode. You go here, you go, and it's like,
Those shoes.
Yeah.
Stop running in the hallway.
and so I'm like, hey, let them sort of ease into it. And that's great advice. So yeah, I like to be that positive interaction they have with an adult.
And I think when you take the time to do life, that's what I hear you say when you're talking about being in the lunchroom or the cafe with the kids. You're doing life with them.
Yeah.
When you slow down and take the time to do life with kids, sometimes it gives you so much more insight to what they are struggling with or what they excel at than it does in the classroom.
Yeah. My stepfather told me that one time. It was Juneteenth, and I had went to one of the Juneteenth celebrations, but I went to the one in Johnson County. And my stepfather asked me, he said, well, don't you work in Wyandotte County? I said, well, yeah. And of course he knew that.
Yeah.
He's like, don't you work in Wyandotte County? I said, yeah. And he said, well, why didn't you go to that? He said, these kids, they need to see you other than just at school.
Yeah.
They need to see you, moving around. And I was like, man, that's great advice. So I took that advice and started, because kids, they'll tell me about performances they have. And I'll reach out to parents and I make sure it's okay. I don't want to just show up. But if they're having a drill team performance or whatever they're doing in the community, I try to show up.
Yeah.
It's to the extent that I can, because I do have my own kids. But to the extent that I can, I try to show up. And if there's a Juneteenth celebration, for instance,
Right.
and I try to be there in the community that I serve. Because that was some of my stepfather was like, why are you going there?
Yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you teach both middle school and then those MBA students.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned from each group?
The most surprising thing I learned is how much they do know and how much they pretend like they don't know.
I think they know more than I did in middle school.
Absolutely.
Honestly, they have more access to technology and knowledge.
It's amazing. One day, I will never forget, one day I was teaching computers and I was walking through and of course, they see you coming before you see them. And so they're not always working on their computer work when they're on this computer. So I walk around the corner and I see somebody, and they didn't look like they were in America. It was a social media site, and the kids still won't tell me to this day, but it changed like every 30 seconds. And I was like, what is this? They wouldn't tell me what it was, but it's amazing how much they know about technology.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they won't send an email, but they know so much about it. And just like some of the ways that kids learn to communicate. For instance, kids nowadays will pull up a Google document and they'll share it. So I can share a Google document with you.
Mm-hmm.
So you think they're working, and what they're really doing is texting back and forth on a Google Doc, because it shows up on their screen, it shows up on your.
So they're passing notes.
They're passing notes virtually.
I had no idea how to do that.
Yeah, they're passing notes virtually, and you think they're working, and they just look like they're
so smart.
Yeah. So
it's like, if you'd use that knowledge to good,
you'd be gold. So that has been what surprised me. And then I love the interaction I get with adult students, because those people are like me when I was trying to just better myself. And so I love that those people are just trying to, further their careers or further their opportunities. And I have a lot of international students, and I love being able to talk to them just from a geopolitical standpoint, even though we're talking about business, but how that works, what that looks like from the countries that they're from.
Yeah.
I love getting that perspective and just finding out the way we're viewed from where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hearing that perspective. And then I've also been surprised at the fact that sometimes adults give the same exact excuses as 14-year-olds. about why they can't be in class or why they missed an assignment. And I totally understand. I get it. But I've always like, wow, they don't get any better.
Yeah. So I have to know, what's the craziest excuse you've been given so far?
The craziest excuse I've been given was, and maybe it's a good one, but my dog was sick, so I couldn't come to class. And I feel like that's just, I'm like, well, what are you going to do with the dog? It's like, he's sick, make him comfortable, come to class. No, he's like, my dog is sick. I can't come to class. And so it's like, it is what it is. Just make sure you have your work done.
Yeah. Well, at least the dog didn't eat the work.
Right.
So
I've not gotten that yet. I've not gotten that yet.
maybe it was sick because it did eat the work. Maybe
You'd have
that's
to
what
eat the
they.
computer though. It's all online.
That's funny. In your journey, you've talked about exposing students to many paths, not just one. What does that look like in your classroom, and why does that matter?
Yeah, so one of the classes I teach is a careers class.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of autonomy with what I teach in that class. We talk heavily on engineering, robotics, and then I also, try to introduce, because not every kid wants to, go to college. So I talk a lot about trades. I've gotten a chance to take kids to trade fairs. One of my favorite projects we do is we do this very elaborate crime scene. So the kids come in, and I have this big tiger head, and they come in, and the tiger head is on the ground, and it's taped. And I do try to make it, because I realize that can be traumatic to some kids. So I use glowing powder as blood, if you will.
Yeah.
And we have black lights. Sometimes I'll have the Law and Order theme playing. Sometimes I have the CSI theme from The Who. I'll have that playing. I have it taped off. They dust for fingerprints. And so that way I make sure I'm like, hey, listen, there's other careers in law enforcement that don't involve, necessarily being a patrol officer. And I know that's where you start. And so I just try to introduce them to a plethora of fields so that they can realize, like, there's so many things they can do. I just got a tool yesterday from one of our counselors where you can, show them a field, show them what kind of money they make, and then add in the responsibilities of life, and then it takes away from the money they make. So based on what kind of car you want to drive, what kind of house you want to have, it shows them, this is what
they're
that
gonna need.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I need that in my own life.
And it goes down, and then you'll go into the red. So that says you need more money to do, do you want to live with a roommate? Do you want to live in a house? So I was just showing that yesterday. So I love being able to show kids those opportunities that are out there, because one of the things I've said, there were a lot of things that I was never exposed to that those paths I might have chose. I've met many military officers in the day. When I was a kid, you saw military officers on TV. And now I have several friends who are military officers. Well, I didn't know that was even something that was available. I thought a colonel was like a unicorn. And I have 2 or 3 friends who are colonels now. But I was never exposed to that.
Well, and I think that goes back to representation matters. You need to see somebody up close and personal in your life that you can relate to doing those things, so they are an option and that real people do them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And kids are really bad too about thinking, like when they're with educators, that they're not real people. So it's just funny how kids' minds work.
Yeah.
So it's important to get them outside of just the education walls through experiences like you're talking about. Do you guys do any career opportunities outside of the building?
Yes, but that is not a part of my job function. We have a lady in our building, her name is Kelly Meyer, and she does a great job of bringing in professionals so kids can sit with them and talk to them about, what they do, speaking to the kids. She does an excellent job with that. I'll tell you one thing I did. I've taken kids to like fairs. There's a trades fair where kids, learn about the building trades and see what, there's really good money there. But one thing I did is there's a YouTuber I follow, or the kids correct me when I say follow, I mean subscribe to. His name is Max Tuning. And Max was really passionate about sour candy. And so 6 years ago, he started a sour candy brand called Sour Strips. So I reached out to his office, and I actually was trying to get him to speak to my class. Just so happened that was the week that he was getting married. And I should have known that because I watched his videos, but he was getting married that week. But his office was like, hey, Max, he would love to do it, but he can't. But he'd love to send you guys some candy. So Max sent my students like 250 bags of candy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was able to give it out to all my students.
That's cool.
And so, a lot of kids say they want to be entrepreneurs, but
Yeah.
they just say it as this blanket term. They don't know what it is. And so he's a candy entrepreneur. And he actually just sold that company for like $75 million. And I tell that story to kids all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what he was passionate about. He liked sour candy, but he said the candy that was on the market wasn't sour enough. So he came out with his own. And he's made himself, generational wealth by doing so. So that was one way to connect that to,
Yeah.
here's an entrepreneur who's very successful who did not grow up with money.
Mhm.
He grew up, I believe he lived in a double wide trailer behind his grandmother's house. And now he's made himself into something. And so the kids love just to see that success story played out. Yeah.
For sure, and it's getting them to think beyond the walls.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's so much life out there. If we
Absolutely.
can connect them to their passion and getting them to think beyond what they see in front of them,
Yeah.
I mean, we can get them inspired, but sometimes that's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you have to show kids the material, the money behind, behind you have to
Yeah.
show kids to sort of to get them inspired. But the bottom line is just exposure. With my careers class, I get to we talk about everything. Right now we're doing a series on robotics where they're going to be building the robot, gets kids hands on with that. And they realize that it's not something that's insurmountable. And
Right.
even though it's a rudimentary task, it's a Lego robot, but the concept is still the same.
Mhm.
And they can take it further and further and further.
And get that. Now, can you get them to build me a robot that cleans my house?
I will try.
Okay. That would be something I would invest in. Going beyond the classroom, you're a husband,
Yep.
you're a dad,
Yep.
you're a sneakerhead, you mentioned that. You like to travel,
Dude.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu learner.
Yeah, that's
Tell me
crazy,
about
right?
that.
That's
Yeah.
crazy, right? Working in education is it's taxing and it can be stressful. And so I've always wanted to study a martial art, and I met a guy. His name is Neil Capra, and before that, I met a guy named Jason Bircher, and I was sort of dabbling in it, and then finally, I just started to jump right in, and so I've been studying and training. I competed last summer, and it's just an opportunity. One, it keeps me active, it keeps me sharp. It's something that I can do as I'm not a kid, but it's they call it the gentle art. You can go full speed and not get hurt. And so I've really just been enjoying learning. I'm not worried about belts or anything like that. I'm just enjoying learning the process and learning the mindset. And I'm telling you, it really has been a game changer for my mental health.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering
Yeah.
about.
I was talking to Jason Bircher, and he said, jiu-jitsu is not a replacement for therapy. He said, if you need therapy, get therapy.
Yeah.
But it's therapeutic. And that was the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's been such a game changer for my mental health, my confidence. I've lost about 30 pounds.
Good for you.
Yeah. And not confident, like I'm not trying to go out and start fights. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. But just knowing that I'm doing something that's bettering myself
Mm-hmm.
and working with people who are interested in seeing you get better.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it. I have to sort of temper myself because I want to go all the time, but I can't.
Yeah,
But I can't.
because you're a father,
Well,
you're a
I got-
husband,
right,
you're
I got
you've
responsibilities.
got all of these other things
Yeah.
going. How good is that for your students to see you picking up something at your place in life and learning something new? I think that's a great example of a lifelong learner as a student.
I had a great example. My dad went back to school at 56 and got his master's degree. He was also in the corporate world and totally changed his career. And now he works in.
So this is a
Yeah.
trend for you.
It is. So
Okay.
I just saw my dad do that. And he, now he works as a substance abuse counselor, specifically with the Native population. And so, yeah, because a lot of kids think that you hit 30 and it's over.
Yeah, they think we're old at 25. So
And I was guilty of that myself. I think that's the key to life is just sort of always be trying something new.
yeah.
And I don't want to be, somebody who's shotgunning everything, but I've really, found a passion there with the martial arts community. And you have that community of people who are trying to get better.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. That's what I absolutely love about it, because it's not about ego. And what I've learned is if you have an ego, you need to leave that off the mat, because man, I'm 6'4", 290 pounds, and I have gotten my head handed to me by 150.
Your ego's going to be deflated real quick.
Real quick. First night. If you have an ego, you will get rid of it the first night. I've had ladies half my size destroy me, and I'm okay with that. And I'm okay because I want to learn. That's all about learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you're that lifelong learner, and that's important.
Yeah.
So how do these passions outside the classroom feed back into the energy you bring to teaching?
Yeah. I love talking to my students about, like I said, I competed last summer in a jiu-jitsu tournament. And, and kids, they don't believe me. Oh, no, you didn't. And I show them the pictures. And of course, and sometimes I'll put it on TikTok, and I notice some of them looking on my TikTok and seeing. I just want to be an example that, you always got to keep just sort of moving forward.
Yeah.
Life can beat you down, and you can worry about the wrong things sometimes. But specifically, jiu-jitsu has helped me just sort of like when I start to feel sorry for myself about whatever a situation is, I go and my coach, lump me up real good, and then it just doesn't seem that bad anymore.
And then your head hurts, so you don't think about what else.
I'm not worried about
right?
anything else. Yeah.
When your kids think about your journey from corporate America to panic attack to professor and teacher, what do you hope they take away about finding their own path?
I just hope resilience, because a lot of people, when one path doesn't work out, they sort of check out. And I hope that, my kids and my students can just see that you are under no obligation to stay in the same path and do the same things as everybody else. You can change whenever you want.
Yeah.
So my dad I talk to him all the time, and he used to say this to me, and it never really hit me. And he used to say, you just start where you're at. Because everybody thinks you have to make this huge change. He's like, just start where you're at. Wherever you're at, you start. And you do an assessment every day, and you figure out, do you have what you need for the day? And if you do, don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Worry about that the next day. Just start where you're at. And so I just hope that kids realize that, like I said, you don't have to stay the same. You can change, but, life is tough. You have to be resilient. That's where, like I said, martial arts has helped me, just sort of keep that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Always be trying to better yourself and better your situation.
And, when I was a kid, I thought I had to have the answers. And that drove me crazy. And I would like to say it stayed in my childhood, but it didn't. It came into my adulthood. Yeah. And it was probably in my early to mid 40s when I went, I don't have to have the answers.
Yep. That's when it hit me.
Yeah. I don't I can decide today what I'm going to do in the next month or two.
Yeah,
I don't have to know what I'm going to do in 10 more years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the day that hit me. I remember driving down the highway, and I could tell you the exact spot, and I was like, it just hit me. It's like, I don't have to have the answers. I'm just going to try something, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, I'll try something else.
Yes, and I tell my own kids, and I tell my students, I say, listen, the only choices that you make that you can't undo are life and death.
Yeah.
Decisions. Yeah. Beyond that, if you decide you want to be a teacher and then you don't want to do it, then don't do it. You want to be corporate America and then you don't want to do it, then don't do it.
Exactly.
So that was empowering to me, and I try to get young people to hear that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the answers.
Yeah.
Do what's right. Do what's right for you today and keep pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's probably the best advice I've ever received. Literally every day I'm like, if I'm good today, then I'm good today. I'll worry about tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would like to do this last question, and I want to know, what's that one story that you can look at and say, this is why I became a teacher?
Yeah. I remember I had a teacher, her name was Mrs. Dollard, and she said, Terrence, you're way smarter than you give yourself credit for. That's when I started to change.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to be for another kid, Because even the kids who don't do well in school, I always tell them, I said, man, you know what? You look like a doctor. And they're like, me? Yeah, you look like a doctor. And if nobody told them that, Mr. Flowers did.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, truly. I've known you for a while now.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for what you do for the kids.
Thank you.
I don't know very many people who've left corporate America to come and give back to kids.
Yeah.
And that to me speaks about your passion and your heart.
Yeah.
And our community is better off because you do that. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing.
I appreciate it. And like I said, thank you for saying that, but I'll be honest, I'm not saving them, they're saving me. And I mean that sincerely.
That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us today, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Queued Up. Follow and subscribe to stay queued up for what's next.